This week, we talked to an Illinois state senator who grew up biking Chicago and has taken that experience to Springfield. Take a listen. Well, State Senator Mike Simmons, thank you so much for joining me on Chicagoans Who Bike.
Of course.
So first of all, is this your bike, and can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, so this is one of three bikes. And this is my favorite bike. It's an extension of my body. I call this my third arm. I love my James Boss Nova. I've had it since 2015. It has over 25,000 miles on it, and it's how I commute.
Okay, and we were talking a bit earlier. You have like some disc brakes, you've got a front fender, but no rear fender. Like, this is a very practical bike, it looks like.
It is a very practical bike. I lost the fender in 2016, a year after I got the bike. I was riding on Foster Avenue near Harlem Avenue, and I tried to hop onto a curb, and the fender got caught, and it tore, and I taped it. I crazy glued it, and it lasted for 9 years, and it finally fell off last year.
Well, I hope one day you get another rear fender, because in
I know.
Chicago, that's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
And how long have you been biking, and what got you into it?
I started biking when I was 5 years old. My grandmother bought me my aunt's girlfriend at the time bought me my first bike, and my uncle, who was going off in the Navy, taught me how to ride it. And I got really good at it. My grandmother taught me how to get good at it. And when I was a kid, I would sneak off on my bike all across Chicago.
Hmm. That's super cool. And what do you use your bike for? I mean, this is a very practical commuter, fenders, disc brakes, cargo rack. Is it
Yeah.
grocery shopping? Is it fun? What's it look like?
You know what? I use this bike to commute, but I also use it to just I like to bike around my state senate district. I think you see things differently when you're on the bike. Um, I like to ride on the bike trails outside of the city. That's often where I go to recharge. So I'll go out to the Fox River Valley
Hmm.
and ride on the Prairie Trail, which takes you all the way to Wisconsin.
Hmm.
That's like a day trip.
Hmm.
I'll take the Fox River Trail out to Aurora. That's about 40 miles. But I just like to ride it around the city. I mean, this is the bike I use for potholes and turbulent streets in Chicago.
Hmm.
And I use it for everything.
Yeah. And what do you like about biking in Chicago?
You know what? I like the people watching. I like the grid streets here. I like to just get on the long. My favorite type of bike ride is get on the long diagonal, like just get on like Clybourne and go all the way from Western to downtown, or from Milwaukee, from Jefferson Park all the way downtown. Lincoln Avenue. When I was a kid, I used to sneak off. My mom didn't know. I would tell her I was riding up and down the street, and I would turn. I grew up at Foster and Lincoln. I would turn down Lincoln. You got a protected bike lane on Lincoln now, but you did not when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And that was not safe, but I turned out okay.
Okay, a little bit of adventure.
Yeah.
And what do you dislike about biking in Chicago? Are there things that you feel like are tough or could be better?
Yeah, we need better protected bike lane infrastructure. And I've been proud as a state senator to champion this, because I understand how important it is for cyclists and for cars.
Mhm.
And the reality is that the progress that we've made so far is good, but it's very incremental. My vision points to a place like Copenhagen, where you have bike highways and you have bike networks where you can get on the bike and literally listen to your music. And you can go from point A to point B and go through alleys and backyards and courtyards and thoroughfares and end up out of the city.
Mhm.
And Chicago could be the same way.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. You know, as someone who has like some decision-making authority, I'm sure a lot of times we might get pushed back if we're talking about a bike project. What would you say to drivers who maybe are concerned about traffic or like the impacts that bike lanes have on, their commute and they're getting around?
Yeah, I would say join in on the fun. I would
Mm.
tell them to get on the bike with me and let me take them around, and they would see the magic of not being so rushed and being able to get air and get exercise.
Hmm.
Like, cycling is just so win-win-win for a lot of reasons. It's good for our mental health. It's good for our relationship to the community.
Hmm.
It allows us to see things that we wouldn't have otherwise seen, like a good small business or a neighborhood court.
Hmm.
And so, I think that motorists should understand how scary and anxious it is for me as a cyclist, even as a state senator, to bike on Chicago streets. And we need shared roadways, and there's a way to do that through infrastructure.
Yeah, that makes sense. So it's not saying like, hey, I think sometimes people get worried that it's like, oh, only bikes are going to be allowed on this road.
Yeah,
You're saying it's more like, hey, we all need to get somewhere. Let's share
right,
it.
right.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me ask a few more here. What's one of your favorite recent experiences biking? Was there maybe like a ride you went on or something you saw that was like really special to you that you're like, this was really cool?
A recent ride that I went on. I have my days in the summertime when I take the whole day and I just ride through Chicago. And so I'll start in maybe Uptown or West Ridge and I'll go all the way out to Beverly.
Mm-hmm.
And those are some of my favorite rides, just like riding on a street on the northwest side and a street on the southeast side in the same day.
Mm-hmm.
I geek out on that,
Yeah.
and start to notice like the opposite grid on the southeast side of the street to what you have on the northwest side of the street. It's just a great way to know the city, especially as a lifelong Chicagoan.
Mm-hmm.
So those are always all day rides. And you really have to be on when you're riding in Chicago streets. I always got a good night of rest before that. I've biked in Copenhagen. Actually, been there. I've biked all over America, Kentucky, California, New England has some really good bike routes.
Okay.
And like I said, biking is like my third arm.
Yeah.
I love the bike.
Yeah. No, that's cool. And especially, a nice long bike ride. I think that's something that people can't, especially Chicago is a big city.
It
so
is.
like, do you get tired? Do you take breaks? Like for someone who maybe isn't used to that, how do you manage that if you're like, I'm gonna bike from north side to the south side?
Yeah. Well, the first thing is I clear my calendar for that day so I'm not rushed.
Yeah.
And I try to let myself get a little bit off the beaten path. I don't do GPS or Google Maps or any of that. Like I just want to figure it
Ever?
out. Not really. Nah.
Really?
Not
like
in Chicago.
If you're biking to like, if I gave you a constituent's address and you bike there, you just know?
Absolutely not. I would just go. Yeah.
That is crazy.
Yeah. I do have an encyclopedic knowledge of Chicago's grid system. A lot of people don't know this about me as a state senator, but I used to study maps when I was a kid. It was just a geeky, nerdy thing I did when I was a kid. And luckily my mom and my family encouraged it. And so now I can tell you any street by grid in Chicago, so I can get around.
Okay, we're gonna have to quiz you right now. You realize
Yeah.
this? You put out a challenge.
Oh no!
Okay, what's the north south? Belmont. What's the number?
3200 north,
Fullerton,
2400 north,
Addison,
3600 north,
Morse.
69 and a half north.
Wow. All right, State Senator Mike Simmons. You know the grid. I
Yeah.
respect that. I'm the polar opposite. Let me be very frank. As someone who bikes around the city a lot, I am like GPS and earbuds. So that is a miracle to me. I love that so much.
Yeah.
That is so cool. Maybe one or two more questions here.
Sure.
Yeah, I think we talked about it a little bit. What do you think people who don't bike might misunderstand about biking or people who choose to bike around our city?
I think some people think that people who choose to bike around the city are obnoxious, or out here to make trouble. And listen, I'm a state senator, so it's my job to make the world a better place. If I get doored, I didn't want that. That was not how I woke up that morning wanting to have that experience.
Yeah.
I have a driver's license. I can drive. I just choose to be a car-free person.
Yeah.
And I would just say to folks that biking is something that I think people who like to bike just appreciate movement. Like I think there's something special about movement and being able to freely move around. And not just as a sense of exercise, but just as a sense of managing stress and managing, our mental health and all these other things. And so it's a lifestyle. It's very much, I bike from point A to point B, not as a commodity, but like because it's really how I want to move and exist. If I had my druthers, I would bike everywhere all the time, even to other states.
Yeah. Okay, that's beautiful. Last question for you. I have to ask something a little more, you're on the government side. As someone who's like a state senator and thinks about those things and like has decision-making power, how do you think government, at the local or the state level plays a role into biking and giving people options to bike around? What does that look like to you?
Yeah, I think that at the state level, as a state senator, one of the things I'm trying to do, I introduced a bill this session that would move IDOT away from highways and focusing more on bus grids. And that's strategic because I want the staff to think less about highways. And that means thinking about not just bus grids and bus routes and connectivity across the whole state of Illinois for buses, but also bikes. Like I'm thinking about that too when I brought that bill forward, because we need state level bike infrastructure. I want the Department of Natural Resources and IDOT to work on getting people across the whole state over 2 or 3 days. And I know there are paths that exist to do that, but I want some of our main roadways and even slices of highways to have dedicated bike infrastructure. My vision is that, and I know that that's not what most people think about, but I've been to other parts of the world where the bike infrastructure is at that scale and at that level, and it can be that way here too. Illinois is a state that has so much nature,
Mhm.
and it's relatively flat.
Mhm.
So I think it should be a biker's paradise.
Yeah. And let me play devil's advocate for one moment there.
Yeah,
Like, you're saying that, I'm like, I love biking. I don't think I'm gonna bike to Springfield. So, can you explain that a bit? Is it also like, because something I do hear people doing is like, I'm gonna take my bike on the Metra and
yeah.
then go from there. But is it like kind of just giving people options of maybe you're like going from Springfield to a small town, or what is that? What's kind of your vision for
I
someone
think
who
it's
isn't
yeah,
traveling 1,000 miles on a bike?
yeah. I think it's going from a city to a small town. You
Yeah.
know, I would just tell you that there are days when I start in Rogers Park and I'll get on the Metro, I'll bike out to Jefferson Park. I'll get the UP Northwest Metro line all the way out to Crystal Lake. And I can get off there and I'm at the Prairie Trail, which will take me to Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Or I can go south to Aurora on a different bike trail.
Hmm.
And so that's like a day trip.
Hmm.
Don't plan anything else that day, by the way, if
Yeah.
you're gonna
Yeah.
do that. Another thing is, for people like me, I will bike to Springfield. I mean,
Yeah.
I would love to go report to the state senate on my bike. I may make that happen in the next year for folks
Okay.
listening. And that means having a place to stay overnight. It means
Yeah.
having a good grid so that I can stop in Urbana or somewhere and find a hotel or Airbnb or another biker who will let me crash at their place. Um, there's a whole network of us that bike around the country that have programs where you can stay with people that want to be out in the outdoors too. And I'm very much an outdoors person.
Okay.
And
Well, cool.
yeah,
Well, I love that. Those are all the questions I have. Anything else that I didn't ask you about that you want to mention?
yeah. When you asked earlier about a cool ride, a bike ride I did recently, I forgot to talk about Critical Mass. In fact,
Oh,
that's
yeah.
how I met you. I met you,
Yes.
Victor,
Yeah,
at
yeah.
Critical Mass like 3 years ago. And yes, as a state senator, I do participate in the Critical Mass. I've been doing it since before I was an elected official. I think it's a wonderful thing when several hundred people take over streets
Mhm.
and bike, and there's so much joy and movement that's happening. And there's music, and there's space for people who are nerdy or weird.
Mhm.
And I think that that's good for the world right now.
Mhm.
And I always enjoy Critical Mass. Even last fall when we took over part of the 94 Expressway downtown, I was on that ride. It's out there now. So I just want to talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a very cool ride. Well, Senator Mike Simmons, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for watching that interview. Subscribe to see more conversations with Chicagoans biking around their city, dropping every other week.